Hello, and welcome to your station about the NWEA MAP test. Today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of why we use MAP testing, what it's good for, and then we'll walk through some examples of pulling information from the MAP test to use in your progress monitoring and intervention cycle. On the agenda for today, we are going to be answering these questions. What is MAP growth? So we will talk a little bit more in detail about the test itself and what it measures. We'll be answering the question, how do schools and teachers use MAP growth scores? So again, talking about that intervention and progress monitoring cycle of how can we fit this information into that cycle for your school. We will answer the question, is MAP growth a standardized test? How is it different from high stakes or those state tests that most of our students are accustomed to? And then lastly, we will kind of delve into how do I interpret the information on the student profile? So really looking at the data that it gives us and how that data can be beneficial for us. So before we can really get into what MAP testing is, it's important to know what tests are available for MAP testing. As you can see listed here, basically all of the core subject areas are covered. We have reading, language, math, and science. Some of those tests are also offered in Spanish. So for our dual language students or students who might also be taking the access test at some point during the school year, MAP is adaptable to those students. Okay, what is MAP growth? Well, first question to answer is, what does MAP measure? As you can see here, MAP growth tracks students' individual growth over time. So wherever they are starting from, regardless of the grade that they're in. So for instance, if you have a third grader and they're actually reading like a fifth grader, MAP growth will be able to identify that. Or you could have vice versa, a fifth grader doing math like a third grader, MAP growth will identify that too. Both things are incredibly important for us as administrators, for teachers to know so that they can plan instruction and intervention efficiently. So if we have those third graders who are performing maybe at a first or second grade level, there's probably some intervention that needs to be happening, and MAP is one of those tools that's going to help us identify the specific skills. Okay. Another thing about MAP is it is a computer adaptive test. What that means is that students get a unique set of test questions based on the responses to their previous questions. Students, if they answer something correctly, they're going to get a question that's a little bit harder. If they answer something incorrectly, they're going to get something that's a little bit easier. So no two students' tests are going to be exactly the same. That goes for how many questions they're going to take too. Some students take, they'll take the whole test all the way through, while other students might only take half of the allotted questions. It really is attuned to what specific students need. And then lastly, what is an RTI score? Well, when students finish their MAP growth test, they receive a number called an RTI score for each subject area that they are tested in. So reading, language, usage, math, or science. They will only get one based on what tests they actually take. This score represents a student's achievement level at any given moment and helps measure their academic growth over time. The RTI scale is a stable scale, like feet and inches, centimeters. It doesn't change. That accurately measures students' performance regardless of age, grade, or grade level. Okay? Like marking height on a growth chart and being able to see how tall a child is at various points in time, you can also see how much growth they have between tests. So most schools will do a three-test cycle for MAP testing. So you'll do one in the fall, one in the winter, and one in the spring. And each time that they take that test, they will be given an RTI score, and you will see later on in this presentation, you will see that graph, which actually plots their growth over time. So you'll see if they've gotten better or if they have had a little bit of regression. All right, is MAP a standardized test? I think this is one of the biggest questions that probably new parents or even new teachers to taking the MAP test or administering the MAP test is what they have. So unlike standardized tests, MAP growth is administered periodically during the school year. So just like we previously talked about, most schools are on like a 3-test cycle. So fall, winter, and then spring. And the test adjusts to each student's performance. So every student is not getting the same test. It is really, really honed in on what specific things each student needs. When we talk about high stake tests, we're usually talking about a test that's designed to measure what students already know based on what is expected at their grade level. High stake tests are also often used in ways that measure grade level proficiency. MAP, however, is designed to measure students' achievement in the moment and their growth over time, regardless of their grade level. So it's quite different than a standardized test, actually. Another difference from a standardized test is the timeline of the results. High stakes tests or standardized tests, you typically have to wait a long time. Sometimes in the school setting, we don't even see those results. They go directly to the student. MAP growth tests, we get those instantaneously. Sometimes, depending on how the school is functioning or the internet in the building, it could take up to a day, but those results come back almost instantaneously, which really allows teachers and teams to start working on those skills that need improvement or need remediation almost right away. Thinking about progress monitoring and intervention and where MAP testing would fit into this cycle. Well, if we think about progress monitoring as we know a student has a skill that needs improvement, progress monitoring would be already having that skill and then continually working on that specific skill, okay? Whereas intervention is that we know that they need a specific skill that needs improvement. So thinking about MAP testing, it would fit within that cycle more of the evaluating stage where we are trying to identify those skills that need the intervention, okay? Once those skills have been intervened, then we can move on to the progress monitoring phase where we are then taking continual data instead of the instruction piece, which is more of that intervention. MAP growth scores. So there's a couple different ways that teachers and schools can use MAP growth scores. We can use them to inform instruction, personalize the learning, and kind of monitor the growth of those students. Like I said, MAP really gives us a nice snapshot of what skills students may be lacking in or might be ready to learn. You will see a little bit later on, the language of MAP testing is very positive in that it is telling teachers or parents, whoever is looking at that score report, these are the things that your child or your student is ready to learn, okay? Principals and administrators can see the scores. So if a whole school is using this program versus maybe just a special ed department or a academic resource department is using this, if a whole school is using it, principals and administrators can see these scores and kind of use them in collaboration with some of those high stake tests. Not every kid does great on high stakes tests. It's a very rigid, structured setting, and we know that that doesn't work for every kid. So MAP testing, while it happens more frequently, hopefully captures a better look for our students or a better snapshot of where they're actually at, okay? Thinking about grade level, MAP testing can kind of tell you where your students are at grade-wise. It's not testing on grade level skills, but it is you can organize the skills that it says that students are ready to learn based on grade level content standards. All right, now into the nitty-gritty part of this, the actual data that we get from MAP testing. And I'm going to walk you through how to access that. And then later on, when you have time to yourself, you're going to be actually doing this for your assignment for this lesson. So first thing you're going to do is when you log into MAP testing or the MAP teacher side of the website, you are going to find the Math Growth Report button, which is on the left side of your screen. Once you have clicked into that, you're going to scroll down. Gives you a bunch of different report options. We're really focused on the student profile for this. There's a class profile, you can look at the school profile, but to help those individual students in this progress monitoring and intervention cycle, we really want to know where the kid is at. So we're going to scroll down and click on the student profile. From there, I guess there's a step in between here where you're going to actually find that student. So there's a couple different drop-down boxes. It might ask you like, which roster are they on? Who's the teacher? Typically you'd put yourself. And then you can select from your specific roster the kid that you are wanting to look at. Once you're there, this screen will pop up. The screen has a few more things, and you'll see it in the next slides. But this is the very first banner you will see. And I've pulled this example from one of my personal students. So I blacked out their name. That's why you see the little black bars there. But this first banner that you see gives the snapshot of the scores that they have received on the tests that they've taken. As you can see in this example, this student has only taken the math and reading assessments. In the high school level where this student was tested, we don't use the language usage and the science testing, but had the student taken those two assessments, their scores would have populated here in this gray area. Underneath, so this page right here is that top banner. Once right below it is this next page where it has mainly the meat of the information that we want. So this area circled in red here, this instructional areas, this is going to be the place that we're going to look at to see those skills that students are ready to learn. This is really going to help us hone in on that intervention piece of, hey, they may not have this yet, but they are ready to learn this so that we can get them on track for maybe what they are working on in class or what their goal area is for their IEP. When you click on that instructional areas, there's the little arrows right here. You click on that and it will open you up to this page, which is a blow up of those instructional areas. In the red over here, you can see that there are two different options. Okay, you can look at the instructional areas by standard or by topic. So if you are a standard-based grading school, the standards place is where I would have you start. If you are not a standards-based school, you can look at the topics. However, I personally feel that the standards, it goes into a little bit more detail and helps you, especially for teachers who are writing maybe IEP goals. This is a really good place to start because we know that those IEPs have to be aligned to a standard. Right? So for this particular student, you can see that geometry and operations and algebraic thinking were some of those areas that they said the student is ready to learn that. And as you can see to the right here, it breaks it down by standard, and then it gives you an idea of what this student is ready to learn. So this student is ready to develop understanding the rigid transformations for severe congruency. Okay, that rigid transformations for severe congruency. Right, so it breaks it down into something that then your IEP team or your instructional team can work on. And at the very bottom of that screen is the RIT growth over time graph. So as you can see, in the spring of 2021, we were somewhere in the yellow zone. And as you can see at the bottom that the zones are broken up by percentile. We dropped a little bit in the fall of 2021, but this student has made great gains since then. You have to look at these scores with a little bit of a grain of salt. If I scroll back here, you can look up in these, the upper banner here, it will tell you like rapid guessing. So if students just clicking through, I mean, that stuff you have to take into consideration when you are working and trying to identify skills. But in this case, even though this student did do a lot of rapid guessing, 16% rapid guessing on this assessment, they still did fairly well. They're in that green zone. All right, now it is your turn. So what's going to happen here is you guys are going to then go ahead and get logged into your map test. You're going to pick a student from an example roster, and then you're going to find that instructional areas section under their scores. And what I want you to do is I want you to propose 2 standards per subject area. So if they took the test for math and reading, I want 2 per area. If they took math, reading, and language usage, then you would be finding 6. And so you're going to pick 2 standards and propose them to the student intervention team that they should be focusing on this year. All right, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing what you produce.